Cool, cool, cool. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Come Up channel where I get yet another opportunity to share my guest journey through live so people can get inspired or they can look at their stories for guidance. So today's guest is a former Marine who spent 10 years in the Corps, 5 as an air crewman, and 5 as a Marine Amphibious and Force Reconnaissance Marine, assigned to 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion. He's currently serving in the Army National Guard and works full time as a pre-mobilization evaluation instructor with the Texas Pre-Mobilization Team. And finally, he's finishing his degree in intelligence studies at American Military University. So, welcome, my guest, Brandon Escochea.
Hey, how you doing?
What's up, Brandon? Man, super excited, man. I really appreciate you jumping on board, man. I know we kind of be going back and forth. And a mutual buddy of ours, or more of yours, my RPL, kind of hooked us up. So that was pretty awesome to get you on board for this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a privilege.
Yes,
Privilege to
sir. So, all right, guys. So, in terms of what we're going to cover today, is a little insight on Brandon growing up. From there, we'll transition to his time in the Marine Corps, with more emphasis on his path to become a recon Marine and what selection was like. And then after selection, a little bit on how team life was like for him. Then we'll proceed to why he got out and chose to go to the National Guard, to go to SF selection, and as well as go into what selection was like for him with that, and just any insights he has for future candidates. Lastly, we'll get into what Brandon's currently doing and his plans for the future. All right, Brandon, Matt. So before we do get started, start with growing up and then just kind of going from there. Gonna hit you with some tough questions, man. So first one's gonna be
Yeah.
Brandon, man. What is your proudest accomplishment?
So I'd say my proudest accomplishment. Is probably within my military career has been becoming a reconnaissance marine. That was um that was definitely at the time I didn't really see it for what it was. I was just driven to do a certain job, but what it required of me at the time, I didn't really have a good perspective for. I had spent some time as an air crewman, which was an amazing job. I got to travel the world at a young age, and I mean, literally from Europe to Asia, South America, all over the U.S. I got to go there and see it all at a pretty young age. So going over and making that lateral move into reconnaissance, into a specialized or special operations unit within the Marine Corps was something I always wanted to do, but I didn't really have a good perspective or a big perspective on what I was actually accomplishing. So making that lateral move in as a sergeant at the time into recon and then making it through the what they called at the time the basic reconnaissance course. First, the basic um, the BRPC basic reconnaissance preparation course, and then the following that the basic reconnaissance course. Making it through all of that was definitely my proudest accomplishment, I would say, within the Marine Corps. It was or within the military. Very very demanding course, very high attrition rate, and it tests you in all aspects, and on all surfaces. So in the water, soon following in the air when you go to airborne and free fall, and then along with everything on the land and all the PT. So yeah, I had to, I'm sure we'll get into it, but that was my proudest accomplishment.
Gotcha, man. Next one's gonna be what has been a major challenge or failure in your military career?
So a challenge, I would say, and uh, what may appear as a failure at first, I don't really think there's anything that can be considered a failure unless you don't learn from it. I think people have heard that before, but I really do. After the last 2 years, I've had a lot of time to reflect on that. But I think the biggest challenge for me was going through a divorce that would probably happened due to how, busy I was in the Marine Corps and in force reconnaissance, and amphibious reconnaissance. That was probably my biggest challenge. It challenged me personally, but it also challenged me professionally, because coming out of the Marine Corps, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but coming out of the Marine Corps, I had things pretty much planned out and set that I was going to go, to SF, making it through SFAS, and going into the Q course. The challenge there was really having to put that down in order to deal with, something personal and something, deal with a failing marriage and a divorce, which is common to many people. But for guys who are really like driven and who really, put a lot of effort into their career, and especially in the military, having to put something down that you've always wanted to do in order to stop burning the candle at both ends, I guess, for lack of better words, and focus on yourself. That was my biggest challenge, was having to kind of take a knee, face outboard, drink some water, take care of the divorce, take care of my family affairs in order to then, get back up and continue moving.
Yeah, 100%, man. And that's no easy task, man. And like you said, we'll probably get into that, but more so just in the aspect of being able to give advice to a soft operator who might be going through that, since this is something that you have been through. And it is something as well that kind of is known within the community, as far as, divorce rates and things like that, because you're just always deployed or you're always gone. So that's always something that can be heard or we can touch on as well. Next one, Brandon, man, is going to be, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
It's funny, I had to touch on this in that course that I was telling you that I was in the last 2 weeks, but what I had mentioned in the course, with a similar question that we had there, and what you're asking me now, I think I'd want to be remembered for my humility. I think humility leads to a lot of other positive aspects of someone's character and someone's personality. And I think humility in a lot of different scenarios, and humility when applied to many things in life, can really allow for something good to come out of a situation that, if approached with any other sort of, from any other way that may not, that may not be, something from a humble, approaching something from not so much of a humble background, or with humility, approaching it in some other way, it may cause that situation to kind of degrade. So having humility, I think, breeds understanding and empathy, and that's been a really positive aspect of my life, and it's allowed for positivity to come out of a situation, whereas negativity may have if I didn't do that.
Yes, sir. I got two more for you, man. This one's gonna be, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Let's see. Really thinking about that question, man. I think I would say maybe have patience. Have patience in I've always been a pretty patient person, I think, with people, but I think with my career, I've been pretty impatient. I've always wanted, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? But I think I tell myself to have patience. Have patience, and if you're out there looking for a girl or something like that, just have patience. Don't fall for the first one that presents herself. Maybe that was a mistake I made as a younger guy. And then, like, have patience in yourself. Have patience. Allow yourself to grow. So, like, back when I was, a young Marine, I went to MARSOC Selection, but I was young. I didn't really have much experience. So I think having a little bit more patience, allowing myself to have grown a little bit more before doing something, even though everything worked out great on the back end. Patience is, I don't think you can ever really have too much patience. You can have good judgment with a lot of patience, but I don't think you can ever have too much patience.
Got you, man. Last one's gonna be, if you had to write a book about yourself, what would it be called and what would it be about?
That's a good question. I've never really thought about that. If I could write a book about myself, what would it be called and what would it be about? Um, Something along the lines of the blessings of others, and friends. Um, maybe simple and short, just the word others, because the amount of influence and the amount of blessing that has come from the people who have been around me and my friends and my family, they've created me. I know there's a big push behind people saying, hey, I've create your own success. All you need is you, and just be successful, because of how driven you are yourself. I think people really underestimate how much we need others, um, to do anything really, to really be successful, and not only successful, but to have longevity in that success. To have resiliency in that success. You need a good circle of guys and a good family, whatever that family may be to you. You need that around you. I've definitely learned that about myself the last couple of years. You really need, a good solid foundation of either a good circle of friends that you maybe consider family, or a good family. So others.
Yes, sir, man. All right, so now kind of getting to your journey throughout life, man. We'll start, of course, with growing up. So give us an overview of when and where you came from, and how many siblings you had, if you had any growing up. So when you were
Okay.
born, where you were born, and how many siblings you had, if you had any.
Yeah, yeah, no. So I was born in Galveston, Texas. I was raised in a little town called Richmond, Texas, right outside of Houston. Um, I was the first of two kids. So I have a younger sister. She's 8 years younger than me. Um, and but whole life, until I was 18 years old, was born and raised in here in Texas. Um, my little sister, she's same thing, born and raised here, works here currently. I've worked. I've never really worked in Houston, for other than for a short time, at a hospital here. But yeah.
And where'd your parents come from?
So my mom was, um, born and raised in Waco partly, and then down here in Houston as well. My dad, the same thing. I think he was raised in Eagle Lake, uh, and but then he moved, as well, out to the south, the, like, Houston area.
Okay. And in terms of like personality, like how would you describe your mother and your father's personality?
I think I'm a good reflection of my mother. I think my sister's a good reflection of my father. But I still, I think, still have traits of both of them. My mom's, I think I have my mom's temperament. She's real even tempered. Kind of just real, you know, lead when she needs to lead, but just kind of go with the flow when able. Um, my dad's, the more assertive type. Kind of like a get things done, his way, and in a good way, but very giving, very generous, and so I think, hopefully get the best of both when it comes to my parents. I try to be, very, take the best from both of them, so very even, very relaxed, and kind of just take the back seat until it's time to step up.
And in terms of like how they were raising you and your sister, um,
Hmm.
Was it a blend of they were tough but also very loving, or was it just like, hey, like tough love? Like how exactly were they kind of molding you and your sister growing up?
I think they were, you know, very, just very understanding, in ways, and my mom, I really, well, I guess you can call it, was a mama's boy, you know what I mean? So I kind of leaned heavily on her. My dad worked very hard, hardest working man I know is what I tell a lot of people. So, he's always been, a provider for the family, along with my mom. Both, very strong providers for the family. My mom, I've always been able to talk to. I think we kind of share the same frequency, when it comes to life and how we see the world. And so I was always, there. My mom was always there to be my confidant, you know what I mean? And my dad was, there as well to kind of teach me the ropes with certain things that a man should know how to do. And we've definitely, my dad and I have grown pretty close upon getting out of the Marine Corps and coming back to Texas, for the time that I've been here. And it's good to see now, kind of build that relationship as an adult, because when I left for the Marine Corps, I was 18, and I really didn't come home until I was 29. So about 29, almost 30 years old. So it's neat to kind of like see that relationship grow as an adult with my parents.
Got you, man. So kind of now going into um military and joining the Marine Corps. So before we do, get into what you did as a Marine and life as a Marine, what was the deciding factor in you wanting to join the military and the Marine Corps out of all the branches?
Um, I think so originally, I mean, I was the kid who played, played Army and had GI Joes and the whole thing growing up. So I think I always knew I was gonna, join the military. I didn't really know what I was gonna do, and I remember being in high school and looking at the Army's recruiting website back in like 2009, and seeing like I had a teacher who was in psyops, and he would talk in psychological operations in the Army, and he would always talk about his experiences with that, and I always thought he was pretty cool. And so I, maybe thought, hey, I'm going to join the Army. Um, but then I had a couple of pretty close friends that I played football with. Well, one close friend who joined the Marine Corps first, and he knew I was looking at joining the military, so he told the recruiter. He told his recruiter about me, and so my whole direction of what branch I was going to choose changed one morning. I think in the summer of 2009, I was just being a bum kid, sleeping, sleeping in or whatever, and I hear a knock at the front door, and so I walked to the front door, and I had just woken up, and it was this recruiter, in his dress, his dress blue, what they call them, the dress Bravos, I think, or dress Charlies. So it's a dress uniform Charlies, which is just the blue pants and the tan shirt. But that's what he was wearing, those, his recruiting outfit, and asked me if I was looking at joining the Marine Corps, and I told him, yeah, I'd be interested. I just knew I was wanting to join the military, so we set up a time to meet him at the recruiting office later that day, and went there and pretty much joined later that evening. So I had a enlisted as a 89 80 89 72 89 72, yeah, enlisted aircrew candidate.
Yeah, it was 8972. I was looking through our messages.
Yeah.
Why that one? What was it about? Because I'm pretty sure you're having conversations like he's showing you different jobs, but of course it's depending on your ASVAB score and whatnot. Kind of what was the deciding factor in choosing that one
Yeah.
specifically?
Really the biggest reason I can think of choosing aircrew was because I wanted to be a door gunner. Like that was like for some reason I had this thought in my head that I wanted to be a door gunner on a Huey, and if I could fly and also shoot at people, bad guys, you know, while flying, that's like the best of both worlds. You know, you get to fly and you get to shoot at bad guys. And so at that time too, like the war in Afghanistan and and the war in Iraq was pretty well, the war in Iraq was dying down, but the war in Afghanistan was picking up, and I was like, well, that'd be great, and go to war and be a door gunner.
100%, man. So walk us through the
Yeah.
Naval Air Crewman candidate school that you had to go through for that job set, and what your experience was like through that school.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So Naval Air Career Candidate School is in Pensacola, Florida, and that's where all the naval pilots go to they go to their initial schooling down there, along with all enlisted air crewmen, right? So of course, I was enlisted air crewman. You have two sides to the house. Well, yeah, all of the naval or Marine Corps maintenance, aviation maintenance, they all go to Pensacola at first. That's where everybody kind of starts off. So Naval Air Crew Candidate School is a group of both Marine Corps air crewmen, air crew candidates, and then naval air crew candidates. Along with the naval air crew candidates, you have the rescue swimmers who go to that as well before they go to rescue swimmer school. And so it's one big class, and all you do really is spend a lot of time in the water. Since it's naval air crew, it's assumed that you're going to be placed onto a ship somewhere. All Marines and Navy air crew are usually based off of a ship, unless you're on the C-130 like I was. We were mainly land based. You know, we can't land on ships, obviously. But there was one time, but that's something you can look up later. So Naval Air Crew Candidate School. One second. It's a little loud. Yeah. One second. I'm grabbing this coffee. All right, man. So Naval Air Crew Candidate School. You report there, and then you do a initial kind of assessment of your swimming capabilities. Once you provide that, or once you do that initial assessment, they see if you are able to class up, and if not, then you stay back and you continue to get better at swimming. Once you're at a certain level of swimming, you move into your actual class, and it's just a bunch of swimming. It's a bunch of classes on survival, water survival, things like that. The basics of aviation, naval aircrew background, but it's really all just making sure that you are able to survive in some sort of some sort of water, like if there was a crash or a wreck off the shore somewhere, off of a boat, it just prepares you to be able to survive that sort of situation. So I think that course is 4 weeks long, and you do a bunch of stuff in the water with your equipment on. You do the helo dunker, which is just the helicopter. I don't know the official name for it, but they put you in a big helicopter fuselage. They put you underwater. They turn it upside down, and then you have to unbuckle yourself and get out. And so you do that a couple times. Once you're qualified in that, you do a lot of swimming with your equipment on, and then it all culminates with a mile swim. You have to do a mile-long swim in your flight suit. So it's just a 2,000-meter swim, and you're just swimming back and forth in this pool. You can't touch the bottom or anything like that, and you can't touch the sides. You just swim for a mile. Once you complete that, your nipples are usually chafed and everything, and you're done with Naval Air Crew Candidate School. So That's what the air crew candidate school is like in Pensacola.
Jeez, man, it sounds like a selection within itself. It's
Yeah,
tough,
it is. I
man.
mean, you have like it's about half of the about 50% attrition rate. So about half the guys who show up, they either recycle, um, or they get put into a different MOS. So they may get put into a maintenance MOS, or they get disqualified for something medical because you have to go to the flight physical and all that.
Okay. So during crewman candidate school, especially with what you just said right now, it's a 50% attrition rate. People are getting recycled, things like that. What were some challenges you faced during candidate school, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Um, so mainly, I'm not naturally a strong swimmer. I didn't really grow up swimming a lot. You know, I did take swim lessons and all that, but I'm not a born swimmer. You know, so that was my biggest struggle. Um, my first time in the water, I mean, it wasn't hard until they started putting on like all your equipment. You put a helmet on, you put steel toe boots on, and you're sitting there and you're having to tread water for a couple of minutes and all of that. And so that's the hardest thing. It's doable, but you have to maintain a level of comfort in the water that isn't really natural to most people because you have all this heavy equipment on. And so that was my biggest, I think that was my biggest challenge, was just, hey, forcing myself to stay calm. And your instructors give you a lot of tools in order to do so. There's something, I forget the acronym they give you, but it's essentially is what it's doing is telling you to slow your breathing, relax your muscles, engage natural buoyancy is what they call it. So you're inhaling, taking big deep breaths, nice and slow, and you're making slow, deliberate movements in order to really engage your natural buoyancy and keep you above the water. And it's doable, but you have to really focus on staying as calm as you can in a pretty stressful environment.
Is it box breathing, or is that another technique?
It's very similar to box breathing, actually. Like when you're doing the what do they say? Slow, deep breaths or something like that. But
Yeah, so
what you're
it's
doing,
like 4 in, hold 4 out, and then you repeat the
yeah,
process.
yeah. So it looks very similar to that, and you can probably box breathe in the pool and be perfectly fine. You just need to do it to where you're not going to pass out.
Yeah.
But when you're treading water in any situation, really, you want to focus on inhaling nice and slow, while you're on the down, while you're on the upstroke, right? So when I say upstroke, that's the part of the stroke in the water where you're pulling yourself into the water. So you want to inhale so that you're increasing your buoyancy, and then exhale when you're actually on the downstroke where you're pushing the water down and you're coming up. You want to exhale, and so doing things like that, made me uh, control my discomfort and maintain a level of comfort in the water that maybe otherwise I wouldn't have had.
Got you. I might butcher this, so feel free to correct me on this. So you complete candidate school. You get assigned to Kilo Charlie 130 Tango Crewmaster, or KC 130 Tango Crewmasters. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, so it's the KC 130. Yeah, Kilo Charlie. Yeah, so the KC 130T. KC just means it's an aerial refueling platform. But it's a C-130, right? Everybody knows most people know what a C-130 is. It's just a cargo platform in the Marine Corps. But the T model was the older model of C-130s. So we had the J models, which came out in early 2000. And the T models were the ones who preceded that. But we were still flying them when I graduated my ground maintenance course.
Got you. And so as a crewmaster, like what are your job responsibilities as a crewmaster? Like what does your job entail?
Um, so the word crewmaster was really just when they created it. It was a combination of the word crew chief and the word load master, because what they did is they took a crew chief and a load master and they combined us into one job. So usually, well, back in the day, like pre 2010, they had load masters and then crew chiefs, and you were only a load master or you were only a crew chief. Well, the Marine Corps, in its wisdom, created an MOS where you're both, which is doable. You can fly as both. You can either fly as a crew chief, somebody who is good at maintenance, ground maintenance, air maintenance, and the systems, or you have somebody who can fly as a load master who is controlling the load that's on the aircraft, the people, the center, the weight and balance, center of gravity, all of that stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, you're as a crewmaster, you conduct anything that requires maintenance, any duties that require maintenance on the aircraft, any duties that are dealing with the actual load that is loaded onto the C-130, and then any in-flight operations such as aerial refueling operations. You have battlefield illumination operations, certain things like that.
Got you. And in terms of being a crewmaster, what was your favorite part of about it? And then like to caveat to that, what was your not so fun part of being a crewmaster, if there was any of that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There was so my favorite part was being able to fly and go somewhere different pretty much on a weekly basis. If we were taking a trip, as we would call it, or going on a trip, you'd usually. So my first flight was from New York to California, and we flew to California. We did some training out there with the pilots, doing low altitude tactics, so flying at about 1,000 feet, um, 1,000 feet AGL, and just like air ground level, yeah. Um, and banking and doing turns and climbing and dropping, doing all kinds of like kind of fun stuff in the C-130. So that was my first flight, and you got to do all that kind of like cool, like low altitude flying, seeing it from the back and out of the crew window. But you're also you're in California. I'm stationed in New York, but I'm training in California for 1 week. But then I go back to New York, and maybe the next week I'm in, Florida or something like that. So
And
that was the fun.
okay, go ahead.
What's up?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I mean that was the fun. That was the cool aspect of it, was just being able to travel, just being able to travel with a small group. Not a big, large group where you're having to do accountability every hour and all this silly stuff. You're traveling as a small crew, and I'm an E3, Lance Corporal, and I'm getting to travel and have pretty much all the freedom I would want while also doing my job. The maybe the negative aspect of it, that freedom kind of increases as you grow in rank, and all that. So that was always nice. But the negative aspect was, sometimes flying gets old. You're stuck in in the back of the C-130 for like 8 hours straight, which you can do various things to fill your time. Sometimes the missions were a little, weren't as great, doing what we call touch and goes, pilot trainers. Say you have a new pilot who needs to practice his landings and his takeoffs. Well, you need a fully crewed, airplane to do that. So we would be stuck in the back, and we're just taking off and then coming in, landing, but then taking back off. We don't stop. You just hit the ground over and over and over. You're just landing. And you do that, you're just flying circles, and then the cargo compartment starts to smell like fuel. You're getting kind of air sick because you keep hitting these like rough landings, because the pilot up there is just a new pilot. He's trying to practice his landing, and so that was maybe a negative aspect of it.
Jeez, man. Yeah, I would hate to get air sickness up there, man. That'd be atrocious.
Yeah.
But going into recon, man, but recon selection first. Was going to selection always a plan of yours, or was this something more you like stumbled upon, just during your time in service?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't always a plan, I don't think. I mean, I went through MARSOC assessment and selection. And then I made it through the selection all the way. but I just didn't get selected at that younger, that was 3 years in the Marines. So I finished out my time as a crewmaster, right? And I always knew I wanted to go and do something in the combat arms realm and the special operations side, right? So then recon, that was I mean that was the move to make, force recon, all that. It's funny, I made that lateral move knowing that I can swim, but not really considering that I could swim that well. Like I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'll make it through it somehow, But I know like the whole swimming portion of recon is very strongly based, and just as you have to be just as competent of a swimmer as like say Navy SEALs or Air Force Special Warfare. Like your level of swimming and your capability in the water is all the same. And so I knew that I wanted to get into the ground combat arms and be in a specialized unit, and so that's what I did. And I reported to I after putting in a what's called a reenlistment and lat move package, a realm, to 0321. In 2014, I did my reenlistment and reenlisted in order to lat move to reconnaissance, and so to be a reconnaissance man. And so yeah, reenlisted, and I reported to the basic reconnaissance course in November of 2015.
So, and I forgot about that. That's true. You did go to, like you mentioned, you did go to MARSOC Selection.
Mhm.
But when you became like, I guess like they call it like a non-select,
Mhm.
was that something that kind of ate at you for a while, or was it all right, on to the next thing? Go to
Yeah,
Recon
yeah, like
Selection.
yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I was, like I made it through, did the whole, made it through the whole selection, and then you get to the very end and you realize you're not selected. But looking back at it now, at like then, yeah, I was kind of in a bad mood for a while. A couple weeks. I was, you know, let down. It was like something I wanted to do. But looking back now, I wouldn't. Making it through that selection and coming back kind of gave me a confidence that I didn't have before, because I knew I could make it through something that hard. But it also, looking back at who I was in 2013 when I attended that selection and who I am now, I wouldn't have selected me if I were one of the cadre members. There's that awareness that I have grown into after doing the missions like that, and seeing how shitty things can get. I had some more growing and some more maturing to do. So therefore, like, yeah, it sucks not getting selected, but trust me, you don't want to get selected and not be cut out for the job, because you'll find yourself amongst others, and you don't want to be the guy realizing that you're not cut out for the job, because not only are you then in that circle, but you're going to be quickly found out by the guys around you that you're not capable, you're not the one cut out for the job. So if you need more growing, kind of like I said earlier, like that patience, right? Have patience. If you need more time to grow into us, to grow into that job, to grow into that capability, then allow yourself that time to grow and mature, and don't maybe bite off too much. Don't bite off more than you can handle. You know what I mean?
Got you. And for whether it was MARSOC or Recon, what were you doing in terms of like preparation to get ready for the rigorous training that you were about to go through?
Um, so I was just running at the time. I think that probably I was doing like the MARSOC, what they call the short cards or whatever. So it's just body weight workouts. I prepared for MARSOC and Recon completely different than how I prepared for SFAS. Aside from the running, I still ran, but I will hand over hand say that running has been the foundation of getting me through every single one of those selections. So, and the basic reconnaissance course, like having a good foundation running has allowed me to be good on my feet with weight, and adding to that strength training. So you need to be strong, but running is what allows you to continue to go. to continue to go when nobody else, or when a lot of other people are starting to hit that wall. Having that foundation and endurance is going to allow you to continue to go, as long as you both practice good resiliency, right? Stretch, roll out, eat well, sleep well, do all of that. But running has been the foundation for me in all of those. In the last 3 to 4 years, though, I realized to continue to be able to do all of that, you need to strength train. You need to go in, get into the gym, lift weights well with the right form, with the right weight, and then continue to build that muscle, around everything. So mainly running. Do not go out there. Like, I don't suggest anybody go out there and throw on a ruck and ruck with a 40-pound, 50-pound ruck 3 times a week like that. You don't. I've rucked one time before going to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and that was simply to just give me the warm and fuzzy that I could still do it. But all I did was run distance without anything on and lift weights.
Yeah, man, that's really good advice, man. And going back to our PL, he recommended the same thing, man. And I've been trying to do that myself with strength training, running, and it's been working wonders for me. So that's definitely great advice for those who are looking to go to selection courses like that. So, but going back a little bit to Recon Selection and what that's about, what are the phases of Recon Selection?
So they've kind of changed the name up in the last couple of years, because Recon, you have MARSOC, and then you have the Reconnaissance Battalions. The Reconnaissance Battalions are what initially were disbanded. Well, a Force Reconnaissance Company was disbanded and created the very beginning of what MARSOC is now, back in 2006, what they called Det 1. But they're still 2 different entities, right? So you have reconnaissance, force reconnaissance. So you have the 3 reconnaissance battalions. You have also a 4th reconnaissance battalion, which is the reserve battalion. And then you have 4 force reconnaissance companies, right, within those battalions. So a reconnaissance battalion falls under the infantry division. So I was under 3rd Marine Corps Division, 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, both Alpha Company and Force Company. MARSOC is under Special Operations Command. Well, what they're doing now is Recon will soon fall under MARSOC, from my understanding, and be the Reconnaissance Regiment, and then you'll have Raider Regiment, and then those will all be under SOCOM. So the name, I think right now, is the Reconnaissance, RTAT, Reconnaissance Training and Assessment. I'm not sure. I don't want to butcher that name. You can look it up on the Marine Corps website, but it's Reconnaissance Assessment Program, something like that.
I
But
think it is
anyways,
RAP.
RAP. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
something.
Reconnaissance Assessment Program or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I believe it, man. You can look up the current name for it, wherever on Instagram, or they have their own web page, they have their own Instagram page and everything. But when I went through it, the name was so I reported to Reconnaissance Training Company, RTC, and you had 3 phases at the time. You had Marines awaiting recon training, which were the brand new guys who had just gotten there. And then you had the guys who were in Marine. So MART would usually, PT every day and just prepare to go to what was then called the Basic Reconnaissance Preparation Course, BRPC. So you have BRPC, which is that was the selection. That was where everybody showed up, and for 5 weeks you just PT'd and then you swam, and you just did those 2 things day in and day out. PT and swim, land navigation, everything was or actually we didn't land nav yet. No, it was just PT and swim and rucks. So you did all your rucks, you did all your PTs, all your workouts, and all your swimming there in BRPC, and that's for 5 weeks. You get qualified as an open water rescue swimmer, or safety swimmer, rescue swimmer. So you need to be qualified as that level of a swimmer though in order to go into BRC, because if your buddy needs to be rescued, you need to have the capability to rescue him and get him to the instructor cadre, since you're doing the open water fins in the basic reconnaissance course, right? So BRPC, and then if you make it through BRPC, which BRPC usually has like a 80 to 85% attrition rate, then you go to BRC. And BRC doesn't really have a high attrition rate because everybody who's made it there they've already been selected, assessed, and they've made it to that point. And there you usually have maybe a 30% washout. For injuries, some guys realize they don't want to do it anymore. But yeah, so once you make it through I've made it through BRPC. I had to recycle it though, so I did 10 weeks instead of 5 weeks in BRPC, and then I went to reported to BRC, and that's a 3 month. At the time, it was 3 months long. I ended up doing 4 months because I had to recycle the last phase again, but recycled the last phase and graduated as a class leader for both phases. So.
Yeah. And what phase to you was the hardest for you? Was it the one that you
BRP.
recycled, or?
So I guess I'll break this up a little bit and kind of get into it, add a little bit more detail. So I reported to Recon Training Company, and then immediately went into the basic reconnaissance primer course. I think that's what it was, basic reconnaissance primer course. You just swim and PT. I was fine on land for my first go at BRPC. I was not that strong in the water. I ended up, gaining a lot of strength in the water as we went. But at the very end, you have to rescue one of the instructors, and he's in both flak and Kevlar. He had his plate carrier on with plates and boots and everything, right? So I wasn't, when it finally came to the rescues is what they call it, I wasn't able to get my 3 rescues. I think I got 2 out of 3. One of the instructors just wasn't able to pull them. And so I just needed to gain strength in the water. So, sorry. So once I didn't make it through those rescues, right, we got back from the pool, and I was given the option to recycle. And so I recycled, spent the 2 or 3 minutes in my fields, and then reported back the next week for BRPC all over again. That whole BRPC, that whole 5 weeks went by a lot smoother. I was a lot stronger in the water. I was probably one of the strongest in the class, just because I had just gotten out of doing it for 5 weeks already. Had no issues. Took up class leader for that class, and then graduated as class leader. Finished BRPC and graduated with BRPC class. I forget the name. I think it was a 2-TAC 15 or something like that. 1-TAC 15, 2-TAC 15. Graduated class leader with them, and then moved on into the basic reconnaissance course. Went through the basic reconnaissance course. You have first phase. At the time, you had first phase, which was all just your individual training skills. So we do breaching. You do your land navigation in that phase. You do everything that is an individual recon Marine needs to know. Right now, they even added shooting. So at the time, we didn't do any shooting, but now they do, which is awesome. So you do everything in your individual phase on first phase. So I did that. Ended up getting pneumonia at the end of first phase. The instructors kind of understood, so they gave me like 2 days to get over it. I took some antibiotics and whatnot and got over it, and reported immediately to Coronado. Went down with my class to Coronado to start our, back then amphib phase was in second phase, and so started my amphib phase. And that's another 5-week phase, and you're just in the water. You're just in the water from the time you get there to the time you leave. You're just doing 2K fin, so you're doing 2,000 meters. You work your way up the first couple of days, and then you are every day you're in the water. You're either in the boats, learning how to drive boats, learn how to navigate with the boats, learning nautical navigation, and then you're in the water swimming. So you're just doing those 2K fins every day. And then you go into your 2K bay fins. So you're in the bay, so you don't have too much of a current down there in San Diego Bay. And then you move from the bay, then you move to open water where you're having to break surf. And you learn how to break surf both as just you and your ruck. You break surf, line up, and then you start your 2K fin past the surf zone. Once you do a couple of those, you start learning how to do the same thing in the boats. That's where you see all the famous photos of guys getting washed up in the boats and the boats getting flipped over and all that. You do that with your boats. You break surf with your boats with just paddles, and then you get an engine and you learn how to break surf, with your engine on it. And you have like your little 24-hour like hell day or whatever they call it. So completed second phase and went into third phase, which is the patrol phase of the basic reconnaissance course back then, right? They have patrol phase now, I believe it's second phase. So went into patrol phase. I didn't come from a combat arms background, so I was a little bit. I was weaker when it came to I guess like all the ground tactics and whatnot. So went through third phase, patrol phase, and made it through. Had no issues until we got to our graded patrols. I just needed a little bit more command presence, man. I didn't have a lot of confidence as a leader for a small unit, right? So I made it through my patrols, but I didn't pass two of them. I ended up doing like the 20-mile death hike or whatever they call it, final movement, through like CS gas and whatnot. We all finish up, and then my instructor comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, you didn't pass, your graded patrol, so you're gonna have to recycle." And I had family there, ready for graduation and everything, but it is what it is, and I needed more time to become better at patrolling, and so I recycled, did another 5 weeks there. I again was one of the strongest in the class because I had just finished doing it for 5 weeks, which I should have been. I got more confident in my ability to lead and to control a small reconnaissance team, and then did our final movement again, another 20 miles or so through CS gas and all that fun business, and ended up graduating again as class leader for the class, and yeah, and got orders to 3rd Recon Battalion.
So how are you handling like that adversity, with things like that, like recycles, especially that when you think you're done and you're like, okay, I have my family here, and they're like, hey man, like you got to do this again. That could be mentally deteriorating and also physically degrading because you're putting your body through the most, and you're having to do it yet again. These are no like, and I think that's the hardest thing too is when people talk about selections and things like that, and people like you talk about your experience and what you go through. Like we're just like, oh, 20 miles, water assessments, and they're just words to people. But if you actually understood what it was like, people would be like, wow, like that takes a whole nother level of caliber to be able to go through that and experience, trials and tribulations and just different things of that nature. But yeah, man, just if you like, how did you overcome that adversity through all of that?
I really, I mean, it's what I wanted, so I did what I needed to do to accomplish it, and throughout that whole course, they make it very, very apparent that the job that we're, training to do is the shittiest job that you could probably ever do, really, physically. So It comes with the territory. I think, I knew that, okay, well, I wasn't up to par, and I don't want to be around. I don't want to be the guy that can't hack it, And so that means that I got to stay here a little bit longer and get stronger at whatever it is I need to get stronger at, and that's what's required of me, and that's what I did, And so, one of the tenets of reconnaissance is of Marine Corps reconnaissance. On the recon jack, you'll have three holes in the skull, and they stand for pain, suffering, and misery. And so if that's what they're kind of structuring the whole job about, then I'm right there. I'm on the right path if I'm having to endure pain, suffering, and misery. So it just came with the job, I guess.
Got you, man. And then with cadre, like, with recycling, and they're kind of seeing you a little bit more than usual because you're having to stay there just to, repeat a certain phase or whatnot. Did you notice kind of more of a respect from them to you and not really chewing you out compared to like other people who are coming through, kind of thing?
I mean, I think I just did my best to do my job as a reconnaissance, student, candidate, whatever you call them. And I think the instructors saw that over time. You get more time with the instructors when you're in BRC, so they knew. I think when I recycled third phase, they knew I was about it, and I wasn't there to half-ass it or anything like that. I was there to learn how to be a good recon Marine and move on. And so when I finished, so the death hike, my second class, or the final movement, they call it, right? The final movement of my second class, the class wasn't, you have different kinds of classes, and that class wasn't as strong of a class. I came from a pretty strong class, but I had to recycle out of that class into this class, and this class was fine, really good guys in it, but it just wasn't as strong of a class. And so they were struggling on the final movement. And, I was, as their class leader, like leading them and getting them moving and making sure that we continued our momentum. But there was just some guys there who were really sucking it, and the instructors kind of made it very apparent that we needed to pick up and move. And by the end of the final movement, my lead instructor, came up to me and said, "Hey, you're like, like, good job," essentially, So, and hearing that from my instructors, that meant everything. It meant that, hey, I'm earning the respect of these senior recon Marines. And so if I'm doing that, then I think I'm on the right path.
Got it, man. And so you finally graduate the course. So what comes after that? Do they send you? Because I know you had mentioned SEER school. Do you go to SEER? Do you go to those schools right after that, or is that when you get to your unit, your battalion first, and then you kind of go about that?
Yeah. So you do. I had completed SEER school just after the Naval Air Career Candidate School back in 2011. But yeah. So if you finish the basic reconnaissance course, and you haven't completed SEER school, you immediately go to SEER school, and then you go to airborne. So you'll either do one or the other right after you finish the basic reconnaissance course. So I already had SEER school completed. So I went straight to 3rd Recon Battalion. And then as soon as I got to the 3rd Recon Battalion, they sent me to airborne.
Okay. And when you're reporting to 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion, you get to your unit. Kind of what is it like, being a new guy? Was it very tough for you? Were they kind of giving the vibe of like, hey man, like, props on you for graduating and all this stuff, but you still got to earn your spot, earn your keeps with us, kind of thing?
No, it absolutely is. I mean, you have to continuously, regardless of how senior you are, I mean, you have to earn your spot on the team. I mean, you gain, you make your reputation, you earn your reputation throughout your time there. But yeah, I reported to Alpha Company, first platoon. Um, Immediately upon getting there, the master sergeant who was in charge there was like, "Hey, you're going to Hurst, which is helicopter rope suspension techniques course." So that was my first school that I went to. I became a Hurst master, which is just you just learn everything about ropes and rappelling, along with fast roping out of helicopters and everything, right? So that was my first course I went through. Did well in that. Came out of that course and went straight to airborne right after that. So I mean, yeah, you're the new guy. I mean, that's fine, but I was with really a platoon of new guys. There weren't that many senior guys in my platoon, other than our platoon sergeant. And then we got some senior guys as time went on, but really we were a platoon of, we were all pretty equal. I think we were just a platoon of newer recon Marines. So we all got to grow together and then learn from the few senior guys that we had. But we didn't get those senior guys until we were pretty established as a platoon.
Okay. And as far as like a day to day, like what typically are you doing? Like what kind of training are you doing so that we are, of course, staying, mission ready, and things that of that nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. So you have what, three different phases as a recon. You know, when you come together as a platoon, right? You're together as a platoon for about 3 years, 2 years really. So you have a individual course, individual training phase where you're all going to schools and just doing everything. So really, you have a lot of movement going around. Guys going to airborne, going to free fall, going to dive school and everything. So you kind of just work on whatever it is you're about to go to. So if you're about to go to dive school, you're going to go swim, right? You're going to go do your SOCOM screener. If you're about to go to free fall, you're going to go over your EPs. You're going to go over, all kinds of your like your implementation of using free fall. You can't really get too much into it, but you can understand the concept behind it. If you're going to go to breacher's course, you're going to get with the breacher, and start going over your MSDs and all kinds of things like that. If you're going to a shooting package, you're going to go over, room clearing and things like that. So it all just depends on where you're getting sent to, on really, and with what you're going to do on a daily basis and what your platoon is going to be specialized in. So I was in the raids platoon. So we were specialized in like close quarters battle and all that thing, CQB and all that stuff. So we practiced extensively in that. And then you go into your workup, right? So you have about a year-long workup, and you're just training as a platoon for a year. So you're either going to platoon level shooting packages where you're getting the sim rounds, live rounds, blank rounds, and everything to shoot as a platoon. And then you'll go into your reconnaissance phase where you're just doing recon missions over and over. You'll do like one every month, usually a 96-hour patrol every month. So you work on that. Then you go to your jump packages. So your free fall team you'll go to usually a contracted jump company, like free fall company or parachuting company. They'll put you through a free fall package where all you do is jump every day and get better at stacking, and then you go into night jumps and then doing your hey-ho jumps, your high altitude, high opening jumps, making sure that you're stacking up and you're hitting your designated impact point. So it really just evolved around what your platoon's going to be specialized in as to what you do on a daily basis.
Okay. And I believe you mentioned to me that you deployed to the Middle East, and to the Philippines, and I believe with other government agencies, from, if I remember correctly from what you told me. If you could just kind of overall describe what it was like, being on deployment and just kind of doing all the cool guy stuff, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no. So the Middle East when I went out there, that was with that was with BMGR 452. So we were on a 12 on 12 off standby for our tasking for the Joint Personnel Recovery Center. So that was back in 2014. I was an air crewman there, and we got when as soon as ISIS became a thing and they were taking over cities in Iraq and all that, they sent me and a couple of other crew members out to the Middle East to be on standby and fly missions for Joint Personnel Recovery Center. So we were out there throughout part of 2014, supporting them. So that was my deployment out to the Middle East, and then with Recon, right, Alpha Company during our deployment phase, we were on the USS Wasp, and we floated around the South China Sea for a while, and then went up into the Philippines. Worked with the Filipino Force Recon Marines there. They have their own like special operations. They have the Filipino Navy SEALs, Filipino Special Forces, and then the Filipino Force Recon. So those are like their three special operations branches. And so they were doing deployments in and out of Mindanao and the southern Philippines, and we were just working with them, doing kind of like a joint training and exchange of information, tactics, techniques, procedures, and things like that as they went down to the south. So we did that in the Philippines. And then that was with Alpha Company. And then when I had joined Force Company, I immediately got put on the what we called a POTUS mission. So we were just we were working alongside the U.S. Secret Service's CAT team, along with the Special Forces Crisis Response Force from Charlie 11, First Battalion, First Special Forces Group, and we worked with them in Seoul, Korea, for a while, supporting the G20 summit when President Trump was meeting Kim Jong Un and all that. So we worked there for a while. Had another assignment as a part of the Integrated Survey Platoon with SOCOM's Special Operation Command's. They are the Special Operation Command's Integrated Survey program, and so did that for a while, working throughout multiple diplomatic sites, and then so that's what I did with my time with Alpha and Force Company.
Which of those units were like some of your favorite ones, I guess, like to work with? You mentioned a couple. The Secret Service, work with the Philippines, their special operations community, etc. Which one of those were like kind of your like you love working with those guys?
I really like the Filipinos, man. I kept up with those guys after I left. It was a really tight knit group, of guys, really experienced. Um, but I think that was my favorite group really to work with.
Okay. And were you ever able to work with like DevGru, Delta, Rangers, anything like that, or just kind of the ones that you had mentioned already?
Um, no, not really. No, we didn't work any with. Never really had to work with any SEALs. I worked with a couple of CCTs. Went through a course with some CCTs and special tactics officers. I When I was working with the SOCOM Integrated Survey Team, I did work with the guy who he worked with. He was SF. I think he was Army Infantry, and then he went SF. Did a long career with SF. Went to Delta. Was in what CAG, right? So he spent some time in CAG for a while, and then ended up working with the CIA. So I got to work with him for quite a while. Heard plenty of stories and everything. Really, really, really cool guy. But directly as a unit, no, we just didn't really train together. There's different taskings and whatnot, like just depending on what battalion and what mission set they have. I'm sure there's some recondas out there who've worked alongside, Rangers or CAG possibly, but I just never really. We were out in Okinawa, so we were kind of like away from the flagpole per se. So we just had a different mission within PACOM.
Got it, man. And just kind of summarizing your time in third Reconnaissance Battalion. Just
Mm-hmm.
overall, how would you describe your time in this prestigious unit, and what advice can you give to someone who's about to embark on this journey, or someone who is about to check in? They just graduated, about to check into their unit, and they're officially the new guy, and they're having to just prove themselves.
I mean, I think I would say it is a great spot to go to build and establish a solid foundation for whatever it is you want to go into. Um, yeah, especially as a young guy, as a younger guy, like you're going to go there and become one of the most highly trained and one of the most highly trained and sharpened special operations, you know, teams out there. You uh with the ability to go in there at an entry level, you have the environment where nothing is really given to you. You need to earn it all. And I love that environment because it breeds a sense of ownership and it breeds a sense of pride and lack of entitlement that you may find in other places. I'd worked with a lot of different, special operations units, and then moving into SFAS and the Q course, you get a different breed of guys, and sometimes you need. I would hand over hand take the group of guys who had to earn it, and never really felt as if they were entitled to something. I would work around those guys hand over, time and time again, then work around a group of guys who maybe feel entitled to something or entitled to be treated one way or another. And sometimes you can run into that in certain special operations, communities, with the younger guys. The older guys who've been there and who've earned who have been through their trial by fire and earned their keep. I don't think those guys should be, bitched at about their hair or whatever, or this or that, because they're capable. But sometimes you get the younger guys who make it into, certain communities, and if you're not, if you're not hacking it and you're not pulling your weight, just because you've made it doesn't mean that you can't be fucked up still. You know what I mean? And sometimes you have an issue with addressing those guys because they feel that they've made it. They have like this hubris about them, but that's really just more of a younger guy's issue. The older guys who've made it, you don't really have that issue with them. So going into recon, going into force recon as a young guy, you're gonna have to earn it, and you will be held accountable, day in and day out, and you will be made to earn it time and time again. And so that's what you can expect going in there. And like I've been told before, and it was great advice, be the first one up and the last one to sit, so
Got it,
yeah.
man. Yeah, I think kind of like what you said earlier, that word, humility. Um, yeah, like humbleness, basically. Being humble in communities like that, always wanting to learn, always wanting to get better. And even when you're jacked up, because I mean everybody at some point, and that's across all career fields, even at the when you're at the top, you're gonna be jacked up at some point. And I guess it's being willing, being open to that, and being and okay with that, as long as you're able to yeah, like I said, like just be communicating, be like, hey man, you know what, I'm jacked up, but I'll fix it, um, kind of thing. So yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. But we are going to move into kind of now like just your National Guard, going into the National Guard, wanting to pursue the SF, and then just kind of finishing off with what you're doing now and kind of what your future plans are. But just give me a quick second. I got to use the restroom real quick, Brandon.
Yeah, no, yeah, you and me both. I'll be right back.
Oh man. Woo. Let's go. Not sure if Brandon went to go take a restroom break as well too, but if you did, hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this, man. A lot of gems. It's my first Marine on the channel, so this is very exciting, very awesome, and to especially coming from the community that he came from, all these selection processes that he's been through. I mean, just a lot of tidbits and information that he definitely can pass on to people who want to embark on this journey, or people who just like to hear um, these military stories or whatnot, especially like I said, what they go through. I mean, there's tons of just experience and life lessons just because they go through sometimes some of the worst things that we can think of through training just to get prepared for war and um, things like that. But yeah, man. Other than that, I'm just super excited. I love being able to come on here and share people's stories. I mean, this is something I'm pretty accustomed to. Um, with my friends, having these deep conversations about life, where they want to go in life. So yeah, man, just living the dream. This is just truly a hobby for me. And just something that people can look back on even when our time on this earth is just done. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of my main emphasis with starting this channel. But yeah, we'll let Brandon settle in, wait for him to come back, and then we'll just jump right into it. We'll get into National Guard, going into SF selection, how that was for him, getting his insights on that as well. And then we'll, of course, get into what he's doing now and future plans. And then we'll just conclude the episode from there.
Apologize.
Yep. Back in session. Jets use the Russian too.
Yeah, man. Told my dad. Adios.
Right. Oh, what's up?
I was talking about my parents for a bit. I'm here visiting them. So.
Oh, okay, I got you, man. But cool, man. We'll go ahead and just get into we kind of got your advice, time at third Reconnaissance Battalion. Just great insights, great tidbits. And then we'll sure to get some more through, selection that you went through in the National Guard for SF. And then, like I said, we'll conclude it with what you're doing now and what your future plans are. So
Yeah.
ultimately you do decide to get out. Just kind of had, I think it was the motivation just to want to be home more. And then this is where you decide to join the Guard to go for Special Forces. So just kind of got us through why SF specifically, when you could have, of course, still been recon in the reserves. I believe you said it was 4th Reconnaissance Battalion.
Yeah. So I had um a couple of friends who are going to make the same move over to SF. Really, SF has the same recon SF. They have the same insert capabilities, different mission sets, but SF has the National Guard, unit, right? Um, they're under SOCOM. Now the recon will be getting put under SOCOM soon, but at the time, SF was like, the way to go because they're under SOCOM. So out from the outside looking in, you saw more funding, more better mission sets and things like that. Now, having been in the National Guard, having plenty of buddies who are in the National Guard groups, having worked with a National Guard Green Beret, um, the funding is and isn't there depending. They work off of a op fund and they have funding issues just as recon does. But my main reason for wanting to make the switch over was just to be home more. I was married at the time, so the outlook of being able to come back to Texas, get a house, have a family, but also do the National Guard SF thing and then have a career on the outside. That was my main motivator for moving out of recon and into SF. Um, so that was the initial reason why I got out of recon, left the Force Reconnaissance Company as a relatively senior recondo to go over to SF.
Okay. So now you're in the pipeline. You're going to
Yeah.
SFAS, then the Q course, and then of course Robin Sage, which we'll get into. Being you were a recon Marine, did you have like a chip on your shoulder of like failure is like not an option? Like I cannot, like I gotta represent my community well, or did being in, or is it more of like being in that unit after all the things you've experienced was more of just like a confidence boost? You're like, okay, this is all the stuff I've seen before.
So you mean by that like did going into SF, like having formerly been in recon, did that help or did that like what or just what do you mean
Essentially,
by that?
yeah, like essentially did they help? Because I'm sure like if they know like you were like going to those selections,
Yeah.
you may see different people from different special operations communities, and naturally they have
Yeah.
more of that confidence to them. They're like, oh, well, I've
Yeah.
seen and done this before, so this isn't too big for me. But also like just kind of things I've kind of just seen from like other like on interviews
Yeah.
of Marine Force Recon or whatever the case may be. They just naturally they just have more of that confidence of like, hey man, like you better go in there, you better be like the class leader, like just
Right,
Marines are just
right.
more just like just dogs, man. I mean, that's just the best way I could put it. So I don't know if that kind of like answered your
No, no,
question, but if
yeah,
okay.
no, that I get what you mean by that. Yeah, I think like having made it through like the basic reconnaissance course as class leader, both times with BRPC and BRC, and then, you know, spending my time in recon and going over to the army, like yeah, it was expected that I was to maintain the standard that I had been held to in recon and make it through SFAS, and so yeah, yeah, I believe it definitely helped me. It gave me the confidence I needed to get through um, SFAS. With the National Guard, you have to go through. Uh, it's called the SFRE, Special Forces Readiness Eval, because if you're coming in from a different MOS, not an 18 X-ray, uh, and you're going to SFAS, you skip the whole Special Forces prep course, SFPC or whatever that they put most guys through who are 18Xs. So you need to show that you're already capable, which it's easy. It's an easy task. Like maybe it's simple, but it's not easy, right? You need to, you know, be able to be competitive on the 12-mile run, do your 5-mile run, things like that at that Special Forces Readiness Eval. that you have to do in the National Guard. But I did that. I had a injury to my chest muscle, like right my pectoral. I had a pectoral injury, and the first time I did my SFRE, I blew my push-ups out. I only got like 40 or something like that because I had this like pulled muscle in my chest. So I came back and redid my SFRE, did just fine on it, and then got sent to selection in March of 2021.
Okay. And considering recon use more of the water as an attritter, and arm uses more of the land, and in SFES it's a lot of heavy carrying a heavy rucksack around, just or and just walking for just endless, and wherever you're going you're having a rucksack on. Was that something that was difficult for you to adjust to, or not really?
No, not at all. I think you're used to that. You're used to being capable, extremely capable on all surfaces, air, land, and sea when you're in recon, right? So SF is their pipeline is very land based. You don't do much in the water, which it's fine. They have a certain mission set, and that's how they train. But being in reconnaissance, you are more than prepared to be successful at the Special Forces assessment and selection and Q course.
Okay. And how overall, like, how would you, like, looking back, like, how do you feel you did during SFAS?
So when you get selected, they do a debrief. The cadre, if you get selected, the cadre will debrief you. They'll pull you in and they'll give you a quick debrief on like how you did in the phases, what the instructors wrote down about you, and how you did on peer evals. And I mean, according to the instructors, I did well, was strong in all my areas. I had a pretty shitty movement on the STAR course, so I got 5 out of my 8 points. Some guys get 8, some guys get 4. I've heard some guys get selected with 3. I don't know. I've never been an instructor there, but the STAR course is just it's a beast. Like it's long movements over sometimes pretty shitty terrain, high water. There's a water crossing that you have to go through there, and most people have to go through it, and it's like chest high, sometimes like moving water, and a lot of thick veg, a lot of thick draws and things like that. So that was like probably my weakest point, even though like I'm always been a pretty decent land navver. I did really well at the practical eval, so I got all my points during the practical evals is what they call them, and then I got 5 out of my 8 on the STAR course. But sometimes you just get a shitty hand, I guess, but yeah, I think I did well. I mean, from the debrief that the instructors gave me, I didn't get any negative peer evals, I guess, which is good. I don't think it's a bad thing if you do get any negative peer evals. It's just people are people, and you got to deal with them how you see fit. So,
Was there anyone that, like, surprised you, like, out of the group that got selected, that you were like, wow, like, this guy, like, has some heart, like, you know what I mean? Like, was there anyone that, like, really caught you off guard? Like, this guy's solid.
um, I mean, there's some guys who leave and you're like, yeah, man, that guy seemed really good. And there's some guys who stay, you're like, I don't really know if I want to work with you. But I mean, we started with 280 and we ended with 38 or 40 were selected. So there's quite a bit of guys go away. But I've seen that throughout MARSOC Selection, throughout BRC, and then into SFAS. And I mean, it just, yeah, man. But you can't, if you ever think you can look at someone and put a finger on whether or not they would be found in certain circles, you're completely like mistaken. Because I've seen guys. There's this one guy in BRC. he had reported, he came to our class or BRPC. He was one of the so for the Marine Corps, if you have like a technical job, recon will still come and say, hey, if you want a chance at becoming recon, you can try out. And so this guy was one of those. He was like going to be a bulk fuel specialist or a admin job of some sort, but he reported to BRC because he volunteered for it. And he looked like, maybe 120 pounds wet. He looks like a beanpole. And I was like, this guy's going to get completely crushed in our class because I had already recycled. This is my second go at BRPC. And I was like, there's no way this guy's going to make it. And he ended up crushing BRC, and he reported to 3rd Recon Battalion with me and was in Force Company right away. So, like, great guy, great Marine, great Recon Marine, everything. So, yeah, you can't really, like, look at somebody and be like, oh, I don't really know if you'd make it, or, oh, I'm surprised you didn't, you know what I mean? Or you did,
Yeah, and that's a common thing you hear. I think people hear about like throughout special operations communities, like that guy you think may not make it ends up making it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just have the heart, or I guess you could say, you know what I mean. And it was crazy because I had interviewed a Green Beret on my channel. Shout out John Hamilton. And yeah, man, like he was saying the same thing. Like there's some people that you would look at and you get imposter syndrome. You're like, this guy is so fast, PT stud, smart. I don't know how I'm gonna make it, and I don't feel like I'm near his
Yeah.
caliber. And you end up making it over him. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's always been a crazy, fascinating thing to me within the special operations community. But going back to SFES,
Yep.
what to you was the hardest part for you? Was it team week, or like what was the hardest part for you?
Um, I think it was the trek, even though the Mordia the the majority of the trek wasn't really hard. I mean, it was challenging. Don't get me wrong, but I have done that before, so I had something to put in reference to. And like the whole time in my mind, I was thinking, well, all I have to do is move. Like I'm not getting gassed. I'm not like getting hazed. Not hazed in the traditional sense, but like not having to do push-ups and all this stuff like along the way, which is what the final movement is in BRC. And so, and I had to do that twice, and so I'm putting that into perspective with what I'm doing at SFAS. And you're pretty beaten down because you go from land nav pretty much immediately into team week, and then team week is pretty rough. But I got blessed with having 2 really solid teams during team week, and then moving straight into the trek. And the trek is about 23. I don't know, it varies, but for us, I think it was roughly, by my pace count, was about 20, 23 or 24 miles. And so the last couple of miles, I'm like, pretty beaten down. I didn't eat the MRE out of my ruck, which was a mistake. If you have the MRE, eat it. But I was just, sucking. Really just, you can't talk. I wasn't like, I wasn't the last guy by any means. I was like middle of the pack. But I really felt myself kind of wearing down, my battery kind of being completely depleted, because the last 3 or 4 miles of the trek, I was just like more upset at the situation. Kind of like, man, why am I having to do this shit again? I fucking, I've done this, in recon and all that. And I don't think that's the right attitude to have about it. I don't think that I had the right attitude, but it was just like, I was kind of like ready to just be done with it. So that was maybe the toughest part of it, but it's a mindset thing.
But and even during like at that pivotal moment, did like quitting come into your mind? Like I'm about to just no.
No, not at all, not at all. Which is weird, I guess, when we get into what followed. But no, I was just like, all right, just continue on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then going into the Q course and Robin
Mhm.
Sage that you were able to go through, starting with the Q course. just kind of overall, what did the Q course consist of? And, same thing, how was your experience within that?
Yeah. So I reported to the Q course. I got selected in April of 2021, April, May, June. I think I reported to the Q in like at the end of May, like Memorial Day, or around right before Memorial Day weekend. So reported to special JFK Special Warfare Center, and then waited for like a month, and then I classed up for the Echo course. So I was slated as an 18 Echo. It's a 3 month course, I think, 2 or 3 month course. So went through that whole course. Fantastic course, great professional instructors, very knowledgeable, awesome course. Taught me. I mean, I already had a pretty extensive experience with radios and communication, being from reconnaissance. But these guys taught. I mean, even more. Just opened my eyes up to really being a professional at communications. So got to learn a lot there. And then we finished up our MOS school, and then my class went to SEER school. I already had SEER school completed, so I didn't have to go to it. But then they came back, and then we all classed up for what they called tac skills. Tac skills and Robin Sage are it's like all one big thing. It's 10 weeks. So you have the first 5 weeks are tac skills, and you usually have like a little like refit day or a couple days, 2 days to refit, and then you go into Robin Sage. So they got back from SEER school. I was on leave. I was home on leave for a while, and I came back. Reported together as a class for tac skills, and then we get bussed up to McCall, Camp McCall. Camp McCall is where they hold selection, but it's also where they hold tac skills and Robin Sage, right? Where Robin Sage kind of takes place in various areas, but that's where you're at for most of it. And so we get into tac skills. First week goes by well. Second week goes by pretty well. Right before we left for Camp McCall, I had kind of like been going through it with my lawyer and my wife, my ex-wife, because she was, just being spiteful, things like that. The cadre offered the class a compassionate recycle, which at the time I was just like, no, I don't need to take it, man. I'm good. I'm gonna just continue on, get through tac skills and Robin Sage. But I wasn't really acknowledging how much of a toll that divorce was taking on me, because she was, just doing a lot of just really spiteful things. Like I didn't really do anything to deserve it. And I was trying to be as professional as possible, because I don't want that whole event ever coming back on me in the future for like, some sort of clearance or something like that. And so, I was just being the best, and I had, a lawyer there to kind of back me up and keep me accountable. So we get into about 3 weeks into tac skills, and that stuff really starts wearing on me, because you have no contact, you have no phone, you nothing for 5 weeks. And when I left, like, she was doing a lot of shady things, regarding finances and all kinds of stuff. There was a inspector general's complaint, things, just little things that she was trying to do that nothing ever held any weight or held any ground. But it was just little things that she was really coming after, and it was like weighing on me, along with going through one of the hardest courses in the Army and one of the hardest phases of that course. And so yeah, I was just burning the candle at both ends, trying to take care of this divorce and trying to make it through the Q course. And 3 weeks in, I'd kind of like, found out that she was, doing some pretty shady stuff, or at least expecting her to be doing it from what she had told me. And so I told the instructor one day, I was like, hey, I need to go back and deal with this divorce. Like it's like my mind's not here. I'm making stupid mistakes that I wouldn't expect like one of my Joes back, or one of my dudes on a recon team or somebody to make, like I'm making those mistakes because my head's somewhere else. And so, those instructors there, they're there to make Green Berets, not worry about like some fucking dude's divorce. And so like, all right, sign this paper. It's a VW. And so voluntary withdrawal. I was like, whatever, Roger. And so signed it. That got me a ticket back to Fort Bragg. Got back to Fort Bragg, started taking care of things with my lawyer, getting everything, moving with a divorce. But now I'm like having to, figure out my professional life now because I had to put that down, what I was, planning on accomplishing. So we move on. I get back down to Texas. 19th group. I was under 19th. I was under Charlie Company 5th Battalion, 19th group. They were like handling my PCS up and from Bragg at this point. And, got a call from the recruiter. He's like, hey, man, I heard what you're going through. Sucks, but, this door is going to be closed. But, I hope you get everything taken care of and I'll be in contact here shortly. So he calls me back a couple of days later, dropping the possibility of going over to Air Force Special Warfare. And I was like, hey, thanks, appreciate it. And then yeah, that was the end of that kind of like phase.
Wow, man, that's tough, man. Kind of looking back on it, like, does it hurt? Does it hurt you that you weren't able, like, you were that close and you weren't able to finish it and don the green beret?
Yeah, no, I think that's always like something that's like, ah, man, I wish that worked out differently. But I think, and I'm like a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. I know who I am as a person. I know what I've been through and I know what I'm capable of. So like, I think it would have been a lot different if I had never had been through something that hard. But me personally, I feel physically and mentally BRPC, that was a lot more demanding, at least for me. Probably because I sucked in the water. So every day was waking up and just like, dreading the day because I just dreaded the pool and I dreaded the water. But I think it was a little different for me. I knew like, okay, this isn't going to be it right now. But it is what it is. And I don't think that's the end of, that path if ever I wanted to, go do something similar. But in a way, like I think it worked out for the better because I would have come back to something that would have been way worse than what I left it if I were to have just like left my divorce where it lie and gone away for 10 weeks and came back. And which, I've just recently, recovered from the whole fallout of everything with the divorce, which is fine. I think we all have that kind of, or we all know somebody that kind of goes through something like that. But yeah, I think it's for a reason. And I got everything kind of like, back on track now and got my own plan. So it's all good.
Got you, man. And just kind of cap off the session before we move and just close out with what you're doing now and your future plans.
Yeah.
Any tidbits you can get for SFAS candidates, or if they're in the Q course, Robin Sage, any advice within those realms that you can give to them?
Yeah, I would say just I mean, in SFAS, be good at land nav. Stay off the roads. You don't need them, and they're probably not correct. Um, don't have any. Everybody has a fear of heights and depths. Just push through it. That's fear is a part of your daily life in that kind of lifestyle. So get over it. And then in team week, don't be a bitch. And that doesn't mean don't be weak. Everybody's gonna have their strengths and everybody's gonna have their weaknesses. Don't be the guy who is the only one vocalizing your pain. Like everybody there is in pain. Everybody there is tired. Everybody there is thirsty. Everybody there is hungry. Like you're not special. The only thing you can be is an asset to the team. So suck it up, shut up, be an asset to the team, pick up your weight and keep moving and be quiet unless you have something to say that's useful. But the fastest way to get yourself peered out and taken away in the next Reaper session, what they call it, or whatever, Reaper formation, is being the one guy to bitch while everybody else is already in pain. Like, if you don't have anything to add, don't add anything at all, and just pick up your weight and move for team week. And yeah, and then for the trek, just put your head down, don't talk, and just move. It's literally the most simple task. All they're asking you to do is walk and be quiet. So yeah,
Got it,
man.
man.
And then the Q course is, I mean, just listen to your instructors, apply yourself, be very present, and be very intentional about learning your job. And then when you get to tac skills, I mean, it's time to learn the trade, like actually get in there, get in the suck, learn how to be a Green Beret, you know what I mean? And that's where they make them in tac skills and Robin Sages. You can do everything else beforehand, but you don't really start becoming that Green Beret, I think, until you hit that tac skills and Robin Sage. So
Got it, brother, man. Appreciate those words, or those words of encouragement and advice as well to, future candidates out there. So just kind of, once again, closing out, getting into what you're doing now and your future plans. So in terms of what you're doing now, you said you're at a pre-mobilization. You're a pre-mobilization. I know I stumbled with that word.
oh, no
Pre-mobilization
worries.
evaluation instructor.
Yeah.
So how did you kind of find yourself in that position?
So I had a battalion commander at my unit that I'm at now. He kind of saw, he saw some of the badges I had on my chest, and he asked my background and everything, and he kind of asked me what I was up to. And at the time, I was just working in the ER with the finance section there, and not really, going to school full time, everything, pursuing my degree, but not really liking what I was doing. And he said, "Hey, I want you to come and work with the pre-mobilization evaluation team." And I was like, well, I don't know what that is. Essentially, what it is for the Texas Army National Guard, any unit that is mobilizing to deploy overseas has to go through what's called a pre-mobilization training. So what it is we run them through every single weapon system that they'll ever shoot, whether it be anything from the M17, right, sidearm, all the way up to the Mark 19. Like we run them through any weapon system. We're subject matter experts on all weapon systems, on all basic soldiering tasks when it comes to like qualifying with them. Land navigation, we run them through a whole land nav course. We run them through sticks lanes, anything tactics. Groundside tactics, the Texas Adjutant General requires these units to be checked off and certified by us. So me and about 8 other guys are the instructors for that. And so we just run them through that throughout most of the year. And it's like a month long, 3 to 4 weeks long. And we just run them through that whole thing. So that's what I do right now, full time. I'm a scout team leader, or squad, what would be considered a squad leader, but for our SOP, it's a team leader. So I'm a scout team leader right now with a 1141 out of Camp Bullis. I'll be there until January, and kind of still got some things up in the air, but it's either going to be a reclass over to the intelligence side, or moving over to the Air Force Special Warfare, but kind of leaning pretty heavily over to intelligence.
Got you. Yeah, that's actually was going to be my last question. Was that, with your future plans? So is the SF, is that kind of like something that's not really like what would cause you to want to go back to that?
I think it just like there's a few options and everything that are available there. And that may be something I'll consider in the future, but with me having pursued a degree in intelligence studies and really having a passion for that, I mean, I worked heavily with the very beginning stages of what would be intelligence when I worked in recon. We collected the information that would be turned into intelligence. and I've always had a interest and a passion in working on that side. And I think even for like an actual career, like long-term career, post military. So I'm gonna pursue that right now and see where that goes, and I'll finish out my military career. I'm about 12 and a half years in, so I'm definitely gonna get my retirement, hopefully around 38, 39. But by that time I want to have a second career set up. So still kind of, judging what that second career is going to be, but there's multiple options, and I'll probably be taking the next couple of months to really solidify something.
Okay. And as far as the Air Force special warfare, which one, if you
Mhm.
did choose that route, which one are you leaning towards?
So when you go that route, you would go in on a contract called a SWO-V, Special Warfare Open Entry. I think the V, I forget what it stands for. But what it does is it sets you up to go into the pipeline, and you'd go in either one. You would go through your prep phase, and then you'd go through your actual special warfare assessment and selection, and then you would go into your actual schools phase. And if you get selected, I believe you get branched either into CCT, Special Reconnaissance, or PJ.
Okay.
So
Dang, PJ,
yeah,
PJ would be legit. PJ
yeah,
would be
I
legit.
think pretty good job, man. I think
Yes, sir, man. But man, Brandon, that's it, man. That was a lot of great insight from you, man. Great tidbits that, people definitely could look back on, take from you. So I really just want to say thank you again. And I appreciate you for just coming on here and just sharing your story, giving your words of encouragement, giving advice, and stuff like that. But yeah, guys, man, that concludes the episode. Please share these stories so that way, um, you know, because you just never know who might need this, if this can help someone. I encourage that for all my videos. You just never know who this can help once again. So that's why I do this. That's why I love this as well. But that's it, man. Any other closing thought that you want to give, Brandon, before we go?
no, I really think that's it. I think if you're thinking about doing something along those lines and what we talked about, then stop talking about it and just do it.
Roger that. Oh, yes, sir. Just do it, man.
Yeah.
Can't have said it any better, man. Stop procrastinating. Just go out there and do it. You know what I mean? It'll pay off in the long run for sure. And you won't have any regrets, man. And that's the last thing you want. But that's it, guys. Till next time. I'll see y'all.